Greetings, students, and welcome to this very special edition of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the vlog, the website, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where you go in order to discuss more about different travel destinations. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different social media platforms, of course, starting with my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. On YouTube and Facebook, you can see me there on The Professor Travel. I'm also available on TikTok now at The Professor Travel. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at the_professor_travel. On Twitter, I am at The Professor TR1. And then if you're a blogger, you can find me on theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am so proud to have one of my good friends coming back to join us again. Our visiting professor today is Cruise Director Kabir. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming back. This is such a treat for us. I just wanted to say I really appreciate you. I appreciate your work in the travel industry, as well as this amazing podcast that you have. We'll talk about it in just a little bit. But for those who maybe missed the first one that we had recorded, can you give us a little bit of your background, maybe some of your travel credentials, maybe a little bit of your educational background as well?
Of course. Yeah. So I started working on cruise ships in 2015, but my love with ships actually started when I was 6 years old. I did my first cruise in 2000 and just absolutely fell in love with it. I've done over 30 cruises as a guest. After that, I started working on ships, and now I've been cruise director for 3 years, on ships for 5. My professional experience is actually in television and journalism. So I went to school for TV and journalism, had my own TV talk show here in Toronto. And eventually, I think of it as graduating. I graduated to cruise ships, and
Well,
took to the seas.
well, we are all the better for it because you do an amazing job. I always love speaking with you. I love, as I said, listening to your podcast. You are a very good storyteller. So I'm really excited about this edition for us. So today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about cruises for all types of travelers and some of the misconceptions that they have, as well as different types of cruises that might be out there. But let's talk really quick about cruise misconceptions, because I know there's a lot that are out there. When I've spoken with friends of mine who haven't necessarily cruised before, the two themes that come up oftentimes, and there may be a lot more that might be out there that you have heard, is cruising is just for retirees, or I can't go on a ship, I'm just going to get seasick, or even though they've never been on a ship before. What is the reality to you? What are you seeing?
Okay, the reality, first of all, is cruising in general, I think is a very universal way to travel. I think it's a very easy way to travel. And do I think that cruising is just for retirees? Obviously not. Like, I really don't. I can understand, though, why so many older people enjoy cruising, for sure, because you unpack once, everything is handed to you, everything is within walking distance, it's all wheelchair accessible. So I can understand that element. And a very large percentage of the cruise industry, they are retirees, and that's great, because live your life, enjoy it, have a great time. But there's always going to be those younger cruises as well, and you just have to look for it. You have to be a smart traveler and do your research before you sail. So, I think whenever I get that complaint of, oh my God, there are so many old people on the ship, I'm kind of like, well, it's a 21-day cruise to Russia. Like, what did you expect? Or, Alaska or whatever. So at the end of the day, live and let live. Whoever wants to cruise should cruise, but also those shorter cruises exist for younger people. So seek them out, find them. Seasickness is not a factor, really and truly. I won't lie about that. If you're a smart traveler and you've researched where you're going and you're not even transatlantic. I've done transatlantics that are smoother than, 7-day Caribbean cruises, just because the water at one point literally looked like a pond. You can just drop something in it and it just created these amazing ripples. So I have only had, in 5 years at sea, and also 30 cruises additional to that as a guest, I've only been truly seasick on 2 occasions.
Wow.
So that speaks to something. That for me is the reality in terms of motion sickness on a ship. Doesn't really happen.
Yeah, when I think of motion sickness, I've not been on nearly as many cruises as you have. I've been on 6. The only one I had was And it wasn't even so much a seasickness. It was more of just the ship is moving a little bit stronger than normal. We
Yes.
were off the California coast, which is where I'm located, and we have an occurrence every year called Santa Ana winds that pick up, and
Mhm.
it's very dusty in the area. But when you're on a ship at
Mhm.
sea, sometimes that can feel a little bit more impactful. And so it was myself and my husband's. It was my husband's first cruise, and so we had a wine bottle on the table that was starting to move a little bit like this um, during our
Wow.
dinner, and it was like, yeah. So I mean, we definitely felt the impact of what was going on, but it was like it was only temporary. We just went back to the room, lied down for a little bit. Everything settled out really quickly, and it wasn't even so much of an issue. So there's going to be ship movements from time to time, but is it something that's going to break your entire cruise? I would sincerely doubt that.
No, but if it is a concern, like for example, I worked on a ship that used to belong to Holland America Line. It was very similar to, I can throw an example out there. It was very similar to the Volendam,
Okay.
and that particular size of ship, brilliant size of ship. I absolutely loved working on that ship, or that sister to that ship. Well, the thing is, they're very short. They're very short ships, and they love to do the bob, right? And sailing in the waters that we were in, they not only like to do the bob, they did this thing, and it's when they're kind of going up and down and they're going left and right at the same time. That was always an issue because then you're dealing with motion that's not quite just lateral. It's the other way too. So anyway, long story short, seasickness is not something that occurs regularly. And if you really have an issue with it, you can take the sea bands that go on, or they have seasick pills. But I will tell you, if you take those seasick pills that they give you on the ship, they will knock you out completely. And nobody told me that when I worked. This is just a couple of years ago when I was down in Australia. It was a really rough night. This was the first time that I was truly seasick working on a ship, and we were just flying around. I was in the theater about to take the show off, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, I'm so nauseous. So I took one of these seasick pills, and about 5 minutes later, I'm taking off the show, give it up for the cast, everybody, great job. Tomorrow we're going to be in this port, this time, otherwise get out, have your fun. Halfway through, this seasick pill kicks in, and it was the drowsy element of the seasick pill. And
Oh
I
no.
literally was standing there, and I was like, it was unbelievable.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Um, on
yeah.
on a technical side, though, a lot of modern
Mhm.
ships have stabilizers in order to help with the maintenance of, like, if you're hitting really rough waters, it
Mhm.
shouldn't necessarily be an issue because they can stabilize the ship. Correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so that they help more so with like the left and right, this movement,
Yeah.
which is fabulous, especially for our production shows. Like that's a really, really big deal. It keeps the water in the pool. It keeps things from falling over. However, it doesn't help with pitching, the
Okay.
ship going up and down, which some people, they find that like that rising and dropping motion, that's kind of what does it for them. But the stabilizers do a huge, huge, huge benefit. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So, in terms of understanding your needs as a passenger and what cruise lines and what cruise ships might work well for you, um, what are you looking at for in a travel experience? I think is probably one of the first questions that you'd want to ask yourself, because every cruise is going to be different, whether it's the destination, in terms of, do you want to go to a colder climate, do you want to go to a warmer climate, do you want to go to a more tropical climate? Those are going to obviously have an impact, as well as the things that you like on the ship, as well as things that you might not like.
Right.
That's not necessarily saying that one ship is better than another, because all ships are different and different. Like, for example, I've never been on an Oasis class ship, one of the largest that are in the world, but I keep hearing all the wonderful things about it. And there are people I know who would never want to go on something like that, even though it has a lot of modern conveniences on it, just because they like the smaller, maybe almost yacht size cruise experience.
Right. You know what? You're very right about that, Scott. In terms of understanding your needs, you have to be a smart traveler. I always say this to people, where you need to be aware of the product that you're buying at the end of the day. The Oasis class really tries to hit the nail on the head with appealing to the largest audience, right? They want to have the small ship experience on a massive ship, and they did that very, very, very well. But um, if I'm being honest, I think that their product on Royal Caribbean, specifically their product on these larger ships, is bar none. Like, you just don't find that kind of delivery with other cruise lines that have larger ships. Royal Caribbean manages to just blow them out of the water, especially now. They had the check-in process. For example, when I cruised on Anthem of the Seas, facial recognition to figure out that you're there. Then you literally show them something on your phone, you scan, and you walk on the ship. Your cabin keys are in the door, or rather, not even in the door, in the room. You meet your steward, and you're just good to go, like that. Everything was done in advance.
Wow.
That seamless experience was done in like 2016, well before the other cruise lines had even thought about catching up to it. So that's the experience that you're buying, and you need to be aware of that. Virgin Voyages, they're going to have a very interesting product because they're going to want to innovate and they're going to want to push things forward. So if you're looking for the latest and the greatest and the cutting edge, I mean, Royal Caribbean, Virgin, Celebrity, they're really pushing forward in that respect.
Excellent.
But also, another flip side, there are a lot of little niche cruise lines now that have taken sometimes older ships, sometimes smaller ships, but they've created incredible packages. For example, one of the cruise lines that I do work with, Marella Cruises, they're part of TUI, which is a travel operator. What they do is they package flights, all-inclusive drinks, and they put a cruise together. What a brilliant concept. I'm surprised this concept doesn't exist in the United States, where a cruise line owns an airline. Carnival used to own an airline, so does Celebrity. You know, they have an airline and they can package everything together and it's one fixed cost. What a brilliant concept. We need more of this.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to lead into that when we're talking about brands here really quick, because we're so used to being marketed to the big three here in the United States, which include obviously a lot of the subsets that you're seeing on the screen here. Disney is the outlier there; they're their own little niche. But I mean, depending upon where you're at, most of the people here in the United States, unless they're really in the know, they're not going to hear about like P&O or Mariella or TUI or any of those other ones that are really good. But it's like, how do you even understand, like, where do you find that information? How do you do the research on that if you're not being marketed to it? That's the other concept of this.
It is the other concept of it. And, I remember when I worked on my first cruise line, I have to be just so everybody knows, I have to be very careful of cruise lines that I do mention, because obviously I'm still part of the industry, but I'm also trying to give you, the most candid answers that I can without having to be restricted. So, and please understand that, audience.
Of course.
But you can actually see behind me, if you're watching, right there, those are all pictures of cruise ships that I've worked on and that I love. And one of those pictures was taken in the Caribbean off of one of the first ships I worked on. And there was a ship, it looked like a Royal Caribbean ship, and it said TUI Discovery 2. And I was like, TUI? What is TUI? What is that? TUI, what is that? And eventually figured out, okay, that is Marella Cruises. TUI is the operator, and TUI Discovery 2, which is now known as Marella Discovery 2, was the Legend of the Seas. And
that's why it looks so similar.
That's why it looks so similar, because it is, and TUI is partly owned by Royal Caribbean, TUI Germany, of which TUI UK is a subsidiary, which is why obviously, like, for example, all of Marella Cruises fleet, just about, they now have the X Celebrity Galaxy and X Celebrity Century, which, by the way, are two of the most beautiful older ships I've ever seen. And, just feats of engineering. So if you get informed about things like that, you can get some great deals and experiences, because we get the odd 2 or 3 Canadians that would manage to get on board, and they're like, yeah, our travel agent recommended this. So, all the more reason, if you don't have a travel agent, maybe it's worth getting one, because they can open your eyes to things like that.
Yeah, and travel agents typically aren't any more than you would pay for just getting the cruise online yourself. They can sometimes find better things for you, or be able to find those niche deals, get you cruise credits, things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to that. In terms of the branding, though, you have, like, for example, Carnival and Disney, they primarily special to those family catering cruises. The upscale or the upgraded experience, you have obviously Celebrity, Princess, and there's a whole host of even higher level cruise that go from there, like Region 7 Seas and Oceania and stuff like that. And then you have maybe people who are looking for that specific experience, whether it's a specific port that they want to go to, or you might have,
Mhm.
I don't really care about the ports. Maybe I've traveled on this cruise a million times, but I like the ships. I like to experience different ships, or I
Right.
like this one specific ship. And then, of course, there is the everlasting question: to party or not to party, depending upon how your interpretation. I mean, because, and I was telling you this before the podcast, you're going to have obviously those people who go on vacation to party, but then if you party too hard, then it's like, well, when you're coming back, then you're going to be suffering from it, and then you're going to need a new vacation. So where do you go from that?
Exactly. Exactly. You know what? I think that when we're talking about the premium cruise lines, 100%, there is a big difference between certain ones. You brought up the first differentiator between Carnival and Disney. Obviously, they cater both to families, but they're completely different clienteles. The cost of a Disney cruise is that of a very, very, very premium cruise line. Enough that, with kids, the price is exponentially more. Um, and you know what? I would actually say that between Carnival and Royal Caribbean, there's a massive distinction there too. And even within their own brands, there's a difference between Carnival's Fantasy Class and then Royal Caribbean's Monarch of the Seas, which now, I mean, she's the solo sister, so I'm sure she's going to get a lot more attention than she did before, because her other sisters have passed away. Rest in peace. So, the product is different all around. Now, an interesting one and I would recommend this to first-time cruises especially. A great middle ground is Norwegian. I think they're very underrated at certain times. They offer a premium experience if you want to pay for it, or the most basic experience on the same ship. So you're getting the same product at the end of the day, but it's just how you choose to experience it.
Excellent. Um, on a side note, and I know we weren't going to necessarily talk about this, but I just want to get your opinion on something, if it's okay. And I promise you won't have to call out any cruise ships or anything like that. But obviously, because of COVID-19 and because of what's going on in the travel industry, um, several companies are starting to go out of business, and even Carnival is starting to retire ships, not necessarily selling them to the secondary market, but actually like beaching them and having them scrapped. What is your opinion on stuff like that? Do you think like the older ships should be completely scrapped? Should they be retired? Should they be sold on the secondary market? What are your thoughts?
I'm really, really happy you asked me this question, because you know what? Nobody else has asked me this. And I'm a cruise ship aficionado. I love ships. Um, my my boyfriend actually has cruised on the Sovereign of the Seas,
Mhm.
but when it was the Pullmantur Sovereign,
Oh
which I was
yeah.
very jealous of, because he told me this and then they said, "Oh, we're retiring the ship." There's actually my favorite Indian movie filmed on Pullmantur Sovereign, and the main character's name was Kabir. Really interesting,
Hmm.
coincidence. But I think that old ships should basically be saved from death. No, I don't, because if I'm being completely honest, there are a lot of ships that really need to go. Uh, and, I will mention, I think Carnival's Fantasy Class are not my favorite ships in terms of their
Hmm.
ergonomic design. I don't think they aged well at
Okay.
all. I think they're beautiful for what they are for the short-term market. But in terms of ships that in 2020 we're going to end up going for another 10, 15 years, no, I didn't see that happening. And to be honest, we've been watching, cruise radio news about retirement of Fantasy Class, specifically the Fantasy, for probably like 5, 6 years. Those ships were built they were built to last 25 years.
Mhm.
After 25 years, they weren't supposed to survive. That they were just weren't built for that. They were meant to be party ships in and out. So no, that ship, that class of ship, they've served their time. It's time to go. Sovereign of the Seas, and obviously her sister, who's left, Monarch, and then Majesty. Majesty is the sole sister left, right?
Mhm.
Those ships were feats of engineering. They aged brilliantly, and they were once the largest ships in the world. So seeing the Sovereign of the Seas with her nose cut off I was upset about it.
Yeah.
She had a lot of time left in her. I think that this is a great rebirth for the cruise industry to come out with more efficient ships that are not as fuel heavy. Royal Caribbean's newer ships have incredible environmental protocols on there, not just in terms of health and safety on board, they've got an air bubble system underneath the ship so that there's less friction against the hull. They've put silicone against the coating of the hull to make sure that it moves faster. Diesel electric generators, LED lights, LED solar panels that were on top of the Solstice class, Oasis class, the Anthem of the Seas, and all of that. Quantum class have all of that as well. So that innovation will help save the world. Older ships are going to be recycled into that. Really and truly, I think that's great. Some ships needed to go. I'm happy to see them go. They serve their time. We'll miss them, but that's the circle of life.
Absolutely. And then I know that I think it's a couple of different cruise lines out there are doing liquefied natural gas as far as the powering of the ships as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of different and newer innovations. I'm going to be curious to see how those innovations are going to continue to manifest. You yourself said at the beginning of this that Virgin is on the cutting edge of a lot of different things. I will be interested to see how they spearhead a lot of different things that are moving forward as well. So
You know who else was unreasonably impressive to me and was doing a lot of environmental awareness stuff in addition to Royal Caribbean was their subsidiary Celebrity.
yeah.
Even when back in the day when Century came out, Century, Mercury, and Galaxy, those three sisters, very efficient ships. They have actually direct drive diesel engines, which nowadays are not the most efficient at all. But those ships, for their age, have done a great job at aging well and being able to serve markets that other ships just can't. Like, again, not to wrap on them, Fantasy class were not the most efficient ships, and they were never built for that standard. And ships that were around that age, like the Century, outperforms them in every way and still will continue to last. So merit is given where it is due at the end of the day. So Celebrity with the Edge, I mean, that ship is so eco-friendly, it's unbelievable. So I'm really happy to see the innovation. And you're right, Virgin, all eyes are on you.
Secondary question: are most cruise ships supposed to be longer, like in terms of their lifespan than 25 years, or is that pretty much the standard?
It is the standard. Here's the thing: we're seeing ships that were built now in the 70s and the 80s, some early 90s now, starting to be retired. And I think that's hitting the younger generation of cruisers where they were like, oh, in 1998, I cruised on the Elation, or I cruised on the Sensation, or I cruised on Sovereign, or whatever. That generation of ships is starting to go.
Yeah.
I think 25 years is a very short life for a ship. If you look at a ship, prime example, Queen Mary 2, that ship, you and I both know in 50 years, that ship will still be going because she's historic. She's Queen Mary 2. She will be going absolutely nowhere. Do I think that Carnival Conquest will be here 40 years from now? No, but they were built in the same year, right? They're built for a purpose, and I'm not ashamed to say that they're a business tool at the end of the day, and they have their lifespan. And I'm interested to see in 15 or 20 years, where's the Mariner of the Seas going to be? Where's Liberty of the Seas? Where's Freedom of the Seas? The mega ships of the world, those ships, I don't know, how if 25 years will be enough for them. I think that they're going to last way longer than that. Celebrity Solstice, I expect to see her floating around for decades to come. That is a beautifully engineered class of ships. So they're all built for a purpose. I think 25 years is too short. And if we're in the age of, being eco-friendly, then it should be in our best interest to make sure that things are future-proof so we don't waste.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Let's also talk really quickly about destinations and what a potential traveler might look at. Obviously, they weigh like domestic costs versus having to travel somewhere. Like, for example, with me, I live in Southern California. So for me, the Port of Long Beach is very easy to access. In fact, in December, I'm going to be heading out on keep my fingers crossed, on the Carnival Panorama, which is a newer ship. And so we'll see how that goes. But versus having to travel halfway across the country or all the way across the country in order to jump on something to get to the Caribbean. Also, in terms of international travel and how much the cost differential is for something like that. Not every traveler is built the same way. And so moving apart from the whole concept of retirees traveling, for people that are interested in just absorbing culture and traveling to different destinations, I think there's a lot of considerations here to look at. Would you agree with that?
I definitely think so. Carnival Cruise Line has done incredible job themselves of catering to what I call like port specific markets. They'll say, all right, Elation is now based in Jacksonville for 2 to 3 years. That market it's a drive-in clientele, and they're like that for other ports. Long Beach, especially Panorama, she's one of the first new ships ever from Carnival to be based out of Long Beach right away. She didn't even do a med season. I think she did one cruise and was like, okay, bye, I'm off, I'm going home. And that's amazing for you guys. So these domestic costs, when you're talking about, really getting bang for your buck, port specific ships, brilliant business model, really convenient for passengers and for crew members, very, very easy to learn the system and then stick to that system. And they'll just perfect it. And then once they perfected it, they hand off everything they learned to another ship so that the clientele can experience a new product. Brilliant. Anthem of the Seas has done a great job with that in New Jersey, because Quantum Class was meant for Asia. And it's really great that, we have one that stayed in the US to actually show us what Quantum Class is all about. Brilliant job. Internationally, that cost doubles and triples. The most interesting thing about international cruising is that the primary language on your ship is likely not going to be English, especially if you're on MSC or Costa. And that's a really interesting, you want a cultural experience on a ship, those are cultural experiences on a ship. Another one that people should actually look into, if you're really looking for something cool, check out Mein Schiff or AIDA. They're both German cruise lines that have very forward-thinking ships, incredibly forward-thinking ships, cool itineraries, but the primary language is going to be German. But at the end of the day, maybe you'll learn a bit of German on your cruise and you'll have a very, very immersive experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be one of those things where, some of the people don't really even understand, looking above the top three that are out there. You really do have to scour a little bit. I mean, because there's, over in the Asian market, you have Genting. I know that's another one that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Down in the South Pacific, you have Paul Gauguin, and there's a variety of different ones that are out there. It's just a matter of searching and finding ways to do that. But in terms of population, though, and that brings us on to our next slide here. The activities that might be best for a person might vary depending upon the ship, might depend upon the population, whether it's a person in an aging category, someone who maybe has a family, or someone who's maybe not as physically fit. Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are on that.
Well, ships are built for specific populations of people at the end of the day. Newer ships are going to be far more accessible. If you're looking for something that has larger openings to fit through with a wheelchair, more accessible cabins, not having to pay exponential cost for accessible cabins because there are so many readily available. Your newer ships are way better for you. 150%. Oasis class, very, very easy class of ship to get around on, other than the size. But they could afford larger corridors, more openings, wheelchair ramps, more elevators. You know how many elevators Oasis of the Seas has? It's unbelievable. And the elevators are huge. That's the other thing. So in terms of that and the wide offering of things, Oasis class and Royal Caribbean's larger ships, brilliant. Norwegian Cruise Line's larger ships, brilliant. If you're, again, looking at older ships, it's going to be harder for you. If you're going on, Monarch of the Seas, things are going to be a little bit more challenging because those ships were not built with the same inclusiveness in mind at that time. They just weren't, but now we have much stricter regulations. I know, I think it's the ADA requirements, the American Disabilities Association.
Yeah.
So there's certain ships are ADA compliant. Certain ships are not ADA compliant and have been given an exemption certificate. There was one particular class of ship that I shall not mention again that is not ADA compliant, but has been given an exemption just because of their age and obviously their popularity. And therefore they can continue to operate with the expectation that they're going to be retired soon. And they are. So, again, what I said about those new ships coming out, do I think bad ships being retired is a bad thing? No, not always, because I think it makes room for this.
That makes perfect sense. Also, the certain cost of activities. If you're talking with someone who's maybe thinking in terms of, I'm on a budget, I don't know if traveling is the best thing for me. Maybe they're looking for no cost, low cost, standard pricing, or even some that are looking for premium pricing, depending upon their ideas of that. I would say if you're going to look at vacations, you have to kind of look at the whole picture. You have to look at the
Right.
cost of traveling to the location. You have to look at the cost of food. You have to look at the cost of the lodging. You have to look at the cost of all these things that are consideration. Touring.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts in general about this? Because I'm sure it's a hot button
Well,
issue.
it's a hot button issue, but you know what's interesting about it is there are certain times you can get deals. I know Norwegian's really, really good for this. They love a good bundle. I've always thought that about Norwegian, and I appreciate that for them. Um, where they will include a lot of things. You'll have free internet, sometimes free booze, sometimes you'll have 2 included shore excursions, and it leads to a really good package. But when things get interesting, especially is when we were talking about international travel, you know, that makes a difference because it's not just the cruise cost, the flight cost can be exponential.
Yeah.
For example, I'm looking at one cruise that's leaving from Civitavecchia, another one from Barcelona, right? If the cruise is cheaper on one, but the flight's more expensive on the other, then you're going to end up even. But if you're cruising from Civitavecchia, you have to think about what airport am I flying into? Am I flying into Rome? Okay, if I'm flying into Rome, how am I going to get to the port? Is my transfer included? It's an hour and a half to 2 hours. When we leave, what if we want to spend a day there versus Barcelona would be the clear choice, even though flights there would probably be more expensive. You'll be able to stay at a hotel probably next to the ship or the cruise terminal. Same thing with Amsterdam. If you're taking a cruise from Amsterdam, the Movenpick Hotel is in the port area. You can walk to all of Amsterdam if you want, and you don't have to pay to go there. And the airport, everything's interconnected. You can take public transit there. So these are the things that will make or break an international cruise if you're cruising from other areas. Standard pricing and premium pricing, brilliant you brought that up. MSC's Yacht Club is the prime example of that. You can pay for a premium experience rather. Sorry, I've only just had my coffee.
That's okay. This is a really good topic. I want to continue to talk about this.
No, it's all good. You can pay for the Yacht Club, which is a small ship within a ship, or you can pay for an inside cabin and have unlimited liquor and have just as good of a time. It just depends on what you want to. The Haven is another great example of that.
Exactly.
So you can literally have no cost, low cost, or all the costs. And if I'm being honest, I've done it every single way. I've traveled in the biggest suites. I've traveled in inside cabins. And my favorite way to travel is definitely in my cruise director suite.
It's just a much easier, less concerning time at that point, or?
Well, I'm not out of pocket. So.
Well, that's true. So there you go. And of course, all ships are not the same. You know, you have some that are smaller cruise ships. You have the massive vessels. I know we had a conversation about this before we even started the podcast and vlog to talk about what exactly is a mid-sized ship, because there's so many different interpretations of that. You know, it's just, I guess it's really, you know, do you want the smaller ship experience? Do you want the larger experience? What's your view on that?
I love that mid-size is 1,000 to 3,999. Right. When did that become mid-size? That was large. That was, you know, when we talk about Carnival Destiny, the largest ship in the world, first ship to go over 100,000 tons back in 95, 96, you know, she carried a capacity of 3,400 people. And that was the largest. And then, of course, Royal Caribbean comes in and says, nope, we're going to do you one better. You know, that was always their thing. I felt like some guy at Royal was like, did you see what Carnival's doing? Did you see that? Ruin them. Do it again. Do it better. Do it bigger. But competition is, you know, how the world moves forward. And they did an amazing job. But, you know, they came out with, who was first? Was it Adventure of the Seas that came out right after that?
I think it might have been. Yes, I think you're right.
It could have been Adventure, right? It was Adventure class, 138. Literally, Carnival said, oh, look, we did 101,000 tons, guys. First ship over 100.
Nobody's going to ever beat us. Aha.
Yeah. Then Adventure of the Seas, 138,000 tons. Royal Caribbean was like, no. But sorry, no. And then, just to seal it off, they said, you know what? We're just going to jump to Freedom, little bump. And then we're going to go to Oasis 3 years later. That is like 225. So innovation comes from all avenues. I think competition is great for innovation. I think smaller ship cruises are inherently more expensive. But I wouldn't say that that's, you know, a better experience. I think that you're getting a smaller ship and it'll be more tranquil, but you're definitely not going to get all the bells and whistles.
And then the trade-off would be, I guess, with a smaller ship, potentially you can get into some ports that you can't get into with a larger ship. True or false?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I mean, it's inherently true, but really and truly, like, if we're talking about adventure cruising, that's a whole other thing. Like you were talking about Paul Gauguin.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I said that. Paul Gauguin, I think is how
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
pronounced correctly. You know, and they're in Tahiti, I think, in the South
Hmm.
Pacific.
Yeah.
Um, that's adventure cruising. They've got Zodiacs on board. Compagnie de Pendant, which is a small French cruise line,
Hmm.
they had Zodiacs on board. That's adventure cruising. I wouldn't describe that as a relaxing cruise. I wouldn't want to, you know, sit there and tan on deck. That is a cruise that we're going to Antarctica. Bring your parkas. We're going to go meet some penguins. And this port doesn't have a pier. We're going to be getting on the Zodiac, and you're going to get wet. And that's part of it. When we get into mid-size, that's, you know, getting into Australia's Pacific Aria, which used to be the Rhine Dam, the Staten Dam, Volendam. And if we're classifying mid-size, would you classify Celebrity Solstice class as mid-size? Because they carry about,
What is the total capacity of the passengers on that? Would you say?
I would say it's pushing about 3,500 people or so.
Yeah,
But
I'd still classify it as mid-size.
because I
Anything
would
under
actually,
4,000, I would say.
I think when I worked on there, it was less than that. I think it was 3,100 or something. But they are a very similar size to Carnival's Dream class.
Hmm.
But I don't know how Carnival suddenly has 1,000 more people on there. So these are things to think about.
You know, it's
Very
interesting that
similar
you say
size.
that because I remember, and we were talking again before this started. My first cruise was on the Carnival Tropical, and
Mhm.
while I was of the impression that it only had about 500 or maybe 500 to 700 people on board at the time, which was considered a sizable ship, you know, especially to an 11-year-old child. Um, I've been told that it's actually over 1,000 people on board. Now, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's because they actually did something about lengthening the ship or changing the size of the ship at one point or another. I don't even know if that's like, do you see stuff like that happening quite often?
Where capacities
Or
increase? Is that what
yeah,
you mean? Or
yeah. I mean, because I
yeah,
mean, I wonder if that's something that's like prevalent. You know, is it more financially beneficial for an organization like Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, anybody else to purchase a brand new ship or just to lengthen a ship?
financially, it would make sense to buy a ship and then lengthen it right away. Royal Caribbean did a really good job with that with some of their ships where they, you know, they were new builds at one point. They were 10, 12 years old. In order to revamp them, they said, you know, we're going to give you $150 million makeover. We're going to stretch you. They did that, I think, back in the day with the Song of America, which became the Sunbird, which was the ship I first cruised on. And now it's called the Celestial Olympia. She actually served with Morella Cruises a little bit as well as, I think it was Thompson Dream. But they lengthened her, and for them, I mean, they reaped the benefits of that. She had a much larger capacity, she had more amenities, and she just looked better. I think she looked stubby when she was her original length, and I think she looked filled out properly when she was lengthened. But interesting about Tropical, first of all, the Tropical is still kicking about. She's still alive. She's the peace boat. I think she's registered in Japan, so great for her. But yeah, the experts at finding room to expand, Carnival takes the crown on that. If you look at the Sunshine and the Sunrise, the X, obviously Carnival Destiny and Triumph,
Mhm.
the theaters used to be on decks 3, 4, and 5. What they did was they changed the theaters into the Liquid Lounge, and they
Mm.
changed them from being 3 decks tall to 2 decks tall. And suddenly, deck 3 forward, just in front of guest services, where that atrium area is, you used to just walk straight into the theater. Those are now cabins. So they elevated the theater by a whole deck. Like, how did you do that? Like, and what did that mean? So I would love if anybody has cruised on those ships, specifically you stayed on deck 3 forward, can you please write me a message on Instagram and tell me what it was like? Did you notice? Was there noise or was it okay? Um, so interesting. Ships can be retrofitted just like buildings can. And it's really interesting to see the engineering behind it.
I can imagine. And I think we're going to debate this for quite a long time in the future. Is like there will be people who will love small ships and would never go on something they want Oasis class or larger, and there are going to be those who are like, no, I only want to go on and have that massive experience on a larger ship. So stay tuned on that one too. Now, of course,
Yeah.
with different types of travel, you have people who look for very specific types of programs that are out there. I know that we are going on this cruise in December, and we're falling under a casino rate because my husband is a good gambler. Thank you, husband. And so part of that process is like, we get special deals on stuff like that, but there's also special groups that want to travel, groups of interest like Star Trek conventions that are going on cruises, and theme-based ones. So, I mean, talk to us a little bit about, your understanding and your seeing some of those in the past. I know that there are even some very risque travel, themed cruises as well. So, sure.
Risque. Do you mean the nude cruises? Are we talking about the nude
Yes.
cruises?
Yes.
Yeah. I won't power to you. Take a nude cruise. I think that's great. I would be very interested to work a nude cruise because I would just be very honest and be like, look, I'm not used to seeing this many bits in one place, and I think I would definitely have to think about it a bit. Like, come on, a room full of naked people watching a show, that sounds like a very culturally interesting moment.
It could be
And
very,
that's as far as we're gonna go with that.
yeah. Well, I mean, okay. Taking it back for a second, in terms of thinking about the health and safety, especially in the age of COVID, I imagine that, cruises like that right now are not even on the planning. Maybe sometime next year when things are, possibly much, when there's a cure or when something else is going on in terms of
Like a
that.
vaccine or something, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure a lot of those charter cruises are definitely in the back burner. I'm sure Atlantis, specializing
Oh
in
yeah.
gay cruises, they're definitely going to be taking a little bit of a back seat at the minute. But it's in everybody's best interest, obviously, to continue planning, continue looking for the future, to be as optimistic as possible with a little bit of realism, up and sprinkled on there. And if I'm being honest, I'm interested in seeing when these cruises resume. All eyes are currently on MSC at the time of this recording. I think, is it Bellissima is on the cruise right now, where they kicked off these guests just
Yes.
recently because they weren't following protocol. They tried to leave their chaperone, and they ended up getting caught and thrown off the ship. Great for them. I think that this is an interesting time. We're going to see where we go with this now. I mean, stay tuned. I wish I knew more.
Yeah, it's just, I'm actually kind of surprised that you had people trying to buck the system because you're paying a premium to go on a cruise right now anyways. You have your family with you, you're following the protocols, and then it's just this one thing that you do that just threw off everything because you chose not to follow it. But I'm in agreement with you, and I don't think I've heard anybody disagreeing with this at all. I mean, when I listen to cruise insiders, when I'm listening to vloggers, podcasters, everybody, they're like, no, you know what? Good on MSC for kicking these people off. You need to follow protocols very strictly right now.
If I'm being honest, I actually think they should have been arrested. I think they should have been taken because they endanger public safety. But I can understand people would say that's a little bit too strict. But, and who'd have thought it was going to be MSC to do one of the first COVID cruises and to react this way? MSC is not the most mature cruise company in terms of the ones out there. Their product was very interesting to me. I cruised once with them on the MSC Musica back in the day. Mm-hmm. And, I'll be very blunt in saying that the experience wasn't the best. And they were still there. I mean, they've had 10 more years of experience and mega ships now. So obviously they're doing something right, and they must have changed their tune. When I cruised with them, they were very, very difficult. But I'm very happy to see that clearly they've listened, and they're growing, and they're expanding, and they're listening to people. I think that's really, really important. And I'm really, really happy to see the innovation that they put in place, obviously, for a successful cruise. It's not over yet. And we're still waiting to hear on, obviously we don't want any cases. But yeah, very interesting, especially around COVID, what these cruise lines are going to be doing.
Yeah, and we're at the time of this recording, the cruise I don't believe has ended as of yet. It hasn't come to departure. So we'll have to see if anything amounted from that. But I know that previous attempts to do larger scale cruising over the last several months, whether it's through, I think it's called Hurtigruten or Hurtigruten.
Hurtin Garden. Look, it's Norwegian.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, all right.
It's
So,
Norwegian. That Norwegian cruise line is an actual cruise line from Norway. It is
yes.
of Norway. Um, Amazing ship that took place on. That was actually the world's first hybrid cruise ship.
Hmm.
It's partly battery powered so that it doesn't disturb marine life and delicate ecosystems in Antarctica when it cruises there. That to me was just, I mean, talk about, snafu. How do you have a ship that small with that many cases? Frankly, they were ignorant.
Something,
At the end of the
something,
day, they got a little
something
too
must have
complacent.
happened there. Yeah, I was like, there had to have been something that they, health protocols were not followed or something was slipped by. And same, I think, to some extent with, I think it was Aida that was getting ready to cruise in the Germany area.
Yes, I think it was either Aida or Mein Schiff.
Mein Schiff was another one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could have been Mein Schiff. Beautiful, beautiful ships. But if you read into their articles that came out just after the initial news was broken, they had to cancel a cruise because they had a series of crew members that ended up testing positive for COVID. So it was their screening process that stopped it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it didn't spread. So good on them, and good on them for being honest. I think that the media has not been the kindest to the cruise industry. I really don't appreciate that. I think, everybody should be given their turn, and people love to hate on the cruise industry for whatever reason. But TUI did a good job there. It was a screening process that caught what it should have caught.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And by the way, I really appreciate your time. You are so enlightening to hear, and I really just enjoy speaking with you on all of these. I'm looking forward for the next time we're going to be able to chat again. Now, for my listeners who want to find out more about Cruise Director Kabir and all of your wonderful adventures and the different things that you do, they can certainly find you on both Facebook and Instagram at Cruise Director Kabir, and or your podcast, which is Keeping Afloat. But again, you have another podcast that's coming up called Cruising. Can you tell me just a quick little bit about that?
Yes, and this is an exclusive just for you, Scott. Nobody else has heard this news yet. So I'm transitioning to doing the shows full time now, and in addition to Keeping Afloat, which tells my story of working on a ship and basically a couple of insider secrets that maybe I shouldn't share, but you know what? I don't mind at this point. We might as well just open up the floodgates a little, just to get that information out. So Keeping Afloat follows my story, and we'll continue to. We're about to finish season 1 with a very, very interesting cliffhanger about, I'll give a clue. I had a very hasty exit at the end of my first real company before I went to my second, and it was very, very dramatic. So please tune into that. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, anchor.fm/keeping afloat. Cruising is my new show. It should be coming out very, very soon, ideally before the first week of September. And Cruising is an LGBT themed show following a series of characters on board a cruise ship based on real experiences, but I won't be holding back with it. It's going to be R-rated. It's going to be hot. It's going to be sexy. And it is. And it'll be told in a very different way, but still retain the core elements of my storytelling. So please listen to it when it comes out, and you can check it all out on my Instagram page if you need more links.
Oh, thank you so very much, Kabir. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you for the exclusive. Really great to hear about it. I'm so happy for you with the success of both of these podcasts. Again, just keep up the great work. We really hope to hear from you again. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's a brilliant show of yours as well. And I'm looking forward to hopefully the audience enjoying it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And for my students that are out there, if you have any questions or comments, you can certainly send them to me at Scott@TheProfessorTravel. If you would like to get notified when new videos go up on YouTube, hit the bell icon at the top. You're always, of course, welcome to subscribe. If you like what you saw, please give it a thumbs up. And then if you're on the podcast, we always appreciate a like, a comment in Apple Podcasts. So again, thank you so much for all the stuff that you do. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. And until the next time, make every day a travel adventure. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye bye now.